So the last couple of weeks, done a little bit on painting trees, and last week I did the painting of wood tree. So I brought this painting in. I was going to bring this last week and I forgot. So this is my example of a kind of winter painted tree. Brought that in. And then the other one here was one that actually one of my students in the other class was painting the same view. So I brought that in to show her. Well, this is obviously more of a kind of summer, late summer, come autumn type trees. So just to show you how I go about painting the trees in oils. Today I'm going to use watercolours, which is I've not actually used for quite a while. I've done a little bit of sketching in the sketchbook, so I'm a little bit rusty. So I've been doing a bit of practicing. That was this morning's demo. So working with this tree, and going to do the same again. But with this one, I just went straight in with the paint and almost like drew it out with the paint. This one, I've sketched it out a little bit as well, so you can see any slight differences in the approach. What I'm going to suggest though, really watercolours I find really quite a tricky medium to get them looking good. It's very easy to make them look overworked and tired looking. So for me, the essence of watercolour is to keep them looking quite fresh. So I'm going to go in with a big brush and I've mixed some, and generally what I'm going to do is work light to dark. So I'm going to get some sort of light in, particularly these areas here need to be very kind of yellowy. And so I've roughly sketched in where I'm working with quite a big brush because it'll help hold plenty of paint, plenty of fluid, moisture. And I'm actually going in a little bit lighter than I did this morning. But what I'll do is, while it's still wet, I'll work the darker tones in there as well. So I think that's most of those lighter areas. And then I've got a darker mix here, and try this out, it needs to go darker. So the idea is to work this in while it's still wet, so some of these colours can kind of mingle together a little bit. Could probably go darker still actually, but I'll try it this time and then just add a slightly darker version. Just a tiny bit more running out. Even with the brush this size, I can still get some little tiny marks if I'm careful. If you wanted to sort of try and get a few odd leaves at the edge. I find with trees, it's more, I think they're more successful if you kind of go with broad masses and maybe a few odd leaves on at the edge, which is where you notice them. You wouldn't really notice an odd leaf sort of somewhere in the middle here. But on the edge, the silhouette you might do. So that can be like this. And then I'll probably go for a slightly smaller brush and slightly thicker paint. One thing that's important with watercolours is once you've got the lighter colours in, you want the paint to become a little bit thicker as you go. So if I went back in with very watery paint now, which I accidentally did a minute ago, you find you just wash that paint out and you'll get back run. So you just want to get that thicker and stronger paint as you go. Just mix some, got some more here, some blue and green. So this is really quite dark. And the ready mixed greens, we've talked about this the other week, they're very strong on their own. So I tend to add some red to them to tone them down. So this would be quite nice to get some real darks in. Might be a little bit too dark, let's mix a bit more of that in. Yeah, that's okay. Hello. So I won't do the whole of this because it will take me a little while. But just imagine that sort of kind of working down. And then it's perhaps let it dry, or if you wanted, you might be able to work with it still wet. Some of the branches, tree trunk, so I'll just mix a darker tone now, kind of browny, blacky grey, like that. And I've sketched out roughly where they're going to go, so that will help me to just have something to follow. But in a way, trees can be quite forgiving, so you could probably draw this freehand if you wanted to. That's a bit solid, isn't it? Let's just merge some of that in. I think a lot of people would paint the tree trunk first, which there's no particular rule about it, I don't think. I just thought it might work out better to do it this way. So that's a sort of average size brush, not too small, but it will come to a nice point, so I can get some fairly thin lines with that. I don't want it to be too dark all the way through though, so just lighten that a little bit for some of these other branches. And I find with branches, some are a little bit lighter than others, and if you can vary the tone, that'll create a livelier look, a lively effect. Another way, these little brushes are really good for very thin branches and twigs, so I'll do a tiny bit of that as well. Again, keep it fairly light in tone, don't want it too dark. So that's how I go about a winter tree, sorry, a summer tree. Another approach for a winter tree, so something similar to what I've done here in the oils. That's one from this morning, I'll do a little bit of that, perhaps on this other side. And let's do a picture, I don't know, this one would do, isn't it? Something like that. And what might be quite nice is just have a sheet with little studies of trees. So this one, again, I find this a little bit, I practiced on a sheet, a bit of scrap paper first, and what I'm trying to do is get a dry brush effect. So I've tried it with a few different brushes, so it's just trying to get a slightly broken, so that the paint is just sort of grazing the surface of the paper. So I'll try a little bit of that here. And it's best not to sort of overdo that. So I'm looking at something like this. And the idea is to give an impression of where you've got like sort of quite dense twigs. So it just forms slight shadow in this, almost like a shadow in the sky. And there's some darker bits here. Something like that. And then we could then go in with the twigs and the branch and the tree trunk, just as I have with this one. It's a little bit lighter, so I'll just lighten that a bit. Let that taper out a little bit. The other thing about watercolours is, ideally, you want your paper at sort of that sort of angle. This isn't really very easy to paint with the tool, but you won't be able to see me otherwise. So. Yeah, just a slight angle is the easiest, I think, with the watercolours. And again, I can vary the tone a little bit as I go, slightly darker there, and pick up the light again, hopefully. Try and vary these branches. I can see that that one is slightly darker than that one. And I think often with observational painting, it's about observing the differences between one bit and another, and that will create a stronger look. And then I go to the smaller rigger again, to these fine twigs. And the nice thing about this is, like with watercolour, you can rest on the surface. This is dried already. Whereas oil paint, it would be definitely a bit more difficult. So I've got a bit more control over that. That's been too far. is that okay? Any questions? Okay, right, okay.